My name is Melissa Angel, and on behalf of the BCSF Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you to our virtual Ho'onko service. Ho'onko observes the anniversary of the death of Shinran, the founder of Jodo Shinshu. This memorial service provides us an opportunity to reflect upon his cherished teachings and remind us of the impermanency of life. Shinran lived in the Kamakura-era Japan in a time of disunity and violence. Shinran sought a way for all beings to obtain perfect peace equally. Living a Nembutsu life with his family, he opened up the path to Buddhism to the common people. If Shinran had not clarified the teachings of the primal vow, our temple and sangha would not be in existence today. So today's service is a wonderful opportunity to say the Nembutsu with deep appreciation in our hearts. Namo Edabutsu, Namo Edabutsu, Namo Edabutsu. We'll begin with a group reading, The Three Treasures, 1, on page 8 in the Purple Service Book. It will also be displayed on your screen. Hard it is to be born into human life, now we're living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One, now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Edabutsu, Namo Edabutsu, Namo Edabutsu, Namo Edabutsu. And now Reverend Dr. David Pading will lead us in the chanting of Juseige found on page 93 in your Purple Service Book, and also displayed on your screen. Following the Sutra chanting, we will hear a special Ho'onko Dharma talk by BCSF Supervising Minister Reverend Henry Adams.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's Ho'onko service. We will recite Sambujo, followed by a dedication and chanting Juseige. Please join me in Kansho. Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namandabutsu, Namandabutsu, Namandabutsu. Sambujo. Mujo Nidan Yorai Niu Dojo Sangeraku. We respectfully call upon the Tathagata Amida to enter our homes as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. Bujo Shakan Yorai Niu Dojo Sangeraku. We respectfully call upon the Tathagata Shakyamuni to enter our homes as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. Bujo Jippon Yorai Niu Dojo Sangeraku. We respectfully call upon the Tathagatas of the 10 directions to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. Today, on the occasion of this Ho'onko service, the members and families of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco assemble to celebrate the life and teachings of our founder Shinran Shonin. Having received the wisdom light of Amida Buddha and the true Nembutsu teaching, passed down through Shinran and his teacher Honen and those teachers before them, we express our deepest gratitude and reverence with the calling of the sacred name. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Juseige. Gagon Choseigan. Ishimujodo. Shigan Fumanzok. Seifu Joshogat. Gao Muryoko. Fui Daiseshu. Usai Shobingu. Seifu Joshogat. Kashi Jobundo Myosho Chojipo Kukyo Mishomon Seibu Joshogak Ryoku Jinsho Nenjo E Shubongyo Shigu Mujodo Isho Tenninchi Jinriki Endai Go Fusho Musaido Shoujo Sankumyo Kosai Shuyakunan Kaihi Chiegen Meshi Konmoan Heisoku Shoakudo Zudan Zen Shumon Koso Jomanzo Kiyoro Jipo Nichigan Shujuki Tengo Onbugen Ishu Kaihozo Kose Kudoku Jo Daishu Chu Seppo Shishiku Kuyo Isai Butsu Kusoku Shutoku On Ganni Shinjoman Tokui Sangayo Nyobun Mugechi Tsudan Nifusho Gangaku Erik Toshi Saisho Son Shigan Yakoka Daisen Okando Koku Tonen To Chimyo Ke Namandabu Namandabu Namandabu, 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 Namandabu. Ganishikudoku, Yodo Seisai, Dohon Bodai Ishin. Ojo an rako. Namandabits, 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 Namandabits.
Namanda butsu namanda butsu namanda butsu namanda butsu namanda butsu namanda butsu namanda butsu. Please join me in Gassho. Gassho onegaishimasu. Suppose there are parents with 7 children. When there is sickness among the 7 children, although the father and mother are concerned equally with all of them, nevertheless their hearts lean wholly toward the sick child. It is like this with the Tathagata. It is not that there is no equality among all sentient beings, but his heart leans wholly toward the person who has committed evil. Nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu, nammam dabutsu. Hello, and thank you for joining us for our Buddhist Church of San Francisco Honko service, in which we remember the life of Shinran Shonin, the founder of our Jodo Shinshu Buddhist tradition. This Honko service is a service of expressing our gratitude. That's the meaning of these words, hon, and the word ko means gathering. So it's a gathering to express our gratitude and to reflect upon what we have received. We reflect upon what we have received from the wise teachings of Shinran Shonin and the boundless compassion of Amida Buddha that we receive each moment when we say these words, Namo Amida Butsu. When we think about gratitude, oftentimes we reflect on the very personal and intimate moments of our day-to-day life. For me these days, I continue to stay at home and spend lots of time with my family, as I'm sure some of you do. And I have 3 children now, and the youngest one just turned 2 this past week. So we have a lively household with a 9-year-old who's in 4th grade and a 7-year-old who's in 1st grade. They're doing their school from home. And then we have a toddler who's entering that very special stage of childhood where he's discovering his own opinions and his own attitudes. So things are lively around our house all week long. I once heard someone say that it was when they became a parent that they truly began to feel gratitude and appreciation, understanding for all that they had received when they were growing up. I used to think that this meant that when I became a parent, that I would feel that I was somehow able to give my children everything that my parents had given me, that I would have this same sense of bestowing upon my children that which I had received from my parents. However, having become a parent myself now 3 times over, I realized that what this insight means is that we come to appreciate that no matter how much we try to give and how much effort we make for our own children, that it pales in comparison to our feeling of gratitude for the kindness that we have received. So in our household, it's been very interesting for me to observe the relationships between my 3 sons. I'm an only child, so I didn't really experience much of sibling dynamics of my own growing up. But when I watch my children, it's very interesting to see how they grow and how they mature and how they relate with one another. I remember when our 2nd son was born, our oldest son was 2.5 at the time, and he was not particularly interested in this new baby in the household. He just seemed kind of in his own little world, as you know, we're reminded these days that 2-year-olds are kind of in their own little world. But my parents had come out to visit and to help out with the baby. And then as they were leaving, my mom was giving her 2nd grandson one last hug before she left. And they were kind of standing by the door. And my father was, bringing their suitcases out to the car. And in that moment, I saw that the older son saw my mom holding the baby, and he understood that Grandma and Grandpa were getting ready to leave, and he started to panic. He started to shout, "Baby brother, baby brother, baby brother," thinking that my mom was going to take the baby away. And so in that moment, I realized that he did have this sense of connection and love for his baby brother. And he's always been a very patient older brother. As his own brother, my second son, he came to be 2 years old. He would climb all over my oldest son while he was building Legos or folding some origami. And my oldest son was so patient. He would just carry on with what he was doing while his little brother was bouncing up and down on his back. And he would just carry on and carry on. And it's interesting now as watching them as they get older. At one point, that patience begins to thin. That patience starts to thin out. And as the second brother became more and more assertive in himself, he would get stronger and fight more, and he would really be the instigator of a lot of the household wrestling matches. And it's been so interesting to see now that he has become the older brother, how just in a moment his heart can change. One moment they'll be wrestling and he'll have his older brother in a headlock. He'll be pulling on his hair and he'll be punching him in the back. And I mean, these kids, they're really fighting. And I'll see them fighting and they're wrestling. And then all of a sudden, the 2-year-old now will wake up from a nap and he'll start crying. And one moment, the middle son will have in the headlock, I'm going to get you. Oh. And then you'll hear the crying, and you'll just drop everything, and you'll run to the crib, and you'll start to, try to entertain the baby and calm the baby down, just like a switch. He goes from, being kind of the aggressor, the angry fighter, to the loving, compassionate, kind brother. And there's this kindness, this patience that awakens in our heart for those who are not as strong as we are, for those who are more vulnerable than us. And this is a kind of instinctive thing with us as human beings. And I see this in my sons, but I also see that it doesn't last forever. These days, when the second son attacks the older brother, then it becomes, a full-out brawl, and he's fighting back and pushing, and all of these things, these natural, sibling rivalry and sibling, wrestling matches and so forth. And even the middle son, when he hears the younger son crying, the third son crying, he'll run and go to take care of him. But if he's worked long, spent a couple of hours building a really intricate Lego set, and then that baby brother comes and demolishes it, he's mad now, and he's shouting and screaming. So the human compassion is limited, right? It's not boundless for any of us, right? And so it is a Buddha who is truly able to exhibit this profound kindness and patience. It's not a switch that goes on and off for the Buddha. It's consistent. So this year, we're coming into the year of the ox. And as we come into this year of the ox, we had, of course, our Japanese and Western New Year. At the beginning of this month, we have the Lunar New Year, what's called the Chinese New Year, just around the corner. And so there's a story from the life of the Buddha that comes to mind for me around this time of year. It said that the Buddha, in a previous life, before he became enlightened, seated beneath the Bodhi tree, before he was born as Prince Siddhartha, that he was a bodhisattva, once settled on the path to awakening, and that he lived in a forest. He lived in a forest as an ox, a kind, patient, but very strong and powerful ox. And it said that he had a companion in the forest who was a monkey. And the monkey was not a kind and loving and caring companion. He was a mischievous companion. He loved to cause problems for the ox. And the ox had been out wandering and working hard walking through the forest, and he would find a nice spot of grass and just get ready to settle down for a nice meal. The monkey would jump down on the grass and start dancing around on top of it, smashing it all down and getting in the ox's way so that he couldn't eat. Not only that, but the monkey would climb up upon the ox. He would swing back and forth from his horns like the tree branches. He would grab a stick and rub it on the ox's head. He would whack the ox in the back, saying, "I'm going to ride you like a bull," right? Causing all kinds of mischief, preventing the ox from having even a moment of peaceful rest throughout the day. Now it said one day a sprite, a forest spirit, came through, and he saw this monkey harassing, tormenting the ox. And he walked right up to the ox and said, "What is wrong with you? What's happening here? Did this monkey buy you? Did you lose a bet against this monkey? Could it be that you don't know your own strength? For you are the ox, the most powerful creature in this forest. Look at those sharp horns, hard as a diamond. They can cut through stone. Surely you could run right through that ox, right through that monkey. Teach him a lesson. Show him your own strength. Why do you tolerate this monkey?" And the ox said, "It's true. It's true that this monkey causes all kinds of problems and mischief. But rather than being annoyed with this monkey, indeed, I feel gratitude for this monkey, for he gives me the opportunity to practice patience." You see, it's very easy to be patient with somebody who is stronger than you. It's very easy to be patient when someone's stronger than you and you can't fight back. But it's when someone is weaker than you and causes mischief, when you must exercise your own self-control, that is a precious opportunity to practice the Buddhist virtue of patience. Right? And so the ox had this wise wisdom, and he said, "I know that if I wanted to live at peace and live comfortably, that harming others is not the way to bring about peace of mind for myself. Someday, someone perhaps will see this monkey and will set him straight. But in the meantime, I take this opportunity to practice patience with gratitude." It said that in the moment, the forest sprite was so moved by the wisdom of this ox who would go on to become the Buddha, that he made it very clear to the monkey that he was being very badly behaved and that he needed to change his ways. And the monkey then came to understand and appreciate the ox. So the ox had taught a wise lesson both to the forest sprite and in this way also to the monkey. So this is an expression of the compassion of a Buddha. The compassion of a Buddha. We aspire to that, but it's not easy for me. It's not easy for me to do that on my own. And so at this time, we look to the example of those who have come before us, who have received this wisdom, who have shown it in their life, in their way of living. So today, on this occasion of the Honko service, we remember Shinran Shonin. Shinran Shonin, who received the wisdom of Amida Buddha, who knew his own limitations, and yet showed us the capacity of the Buddha's wisdom to transform our lives, to practice true patience and kindness. Shinran Shonin, as a young man, was a student of a teacher named Honen, and Shinran, along with Honen's other leading disciples, was sent into exile by those who were opposed to this teaching of Honen Shonin's, because it was revolutionary, teaching that all were equally included, all were embraced by the compassion of the Buddha, the good as well as the wicked. Indeed, it was the wicked who were the Buddha's primary concern. The object of the Buddha's deepest compassion were those who had lived a life of mistaken thinking, greed, anger, and ignorance. So Shinran carried this teaching in his heart, He was sent into exile. He lived with his wife, Eshini, in her home territory of Echigo, what's now Niigata Prefecture. And this area was a farming area. And the family of Eshini were farmers. And so he was living with her, and he would have learned from her and from her family the practice of agriculture, how to farm. That's what they did. That's how they made their life. And he lived among the farmers, and he shared this Nembutsu teaching. Now, in time, he would have been allowed to return to Kyoto. The exile was lifted. He would have allowed to return, but he chose instead to join a community of farmers who were moving to the Kanto area, the area around what is now Tokyo. And at the time, that was a newly developing area, an area where a new capital was being built. And in that capital, more and more people were coming in, and they had figured out how to manage the land and to turn areas that had been wild swamps into cultivated rice paddies. And so what they needed were farmers to farm those rice paddies. And so many of those farmers traveled from areas like Echigo, where Shinran was living, where farming and the cultivation of rice was well developed. And these people who knew how to grow rice were needed in this other part of Japan. So they traveled from one country to another, because in those days, each province was in a way like its own country. And so they were traveling from one country to another, right? People who move in this way, we call them immigrants, right? So Shinran was part of this movement of immigrants, people moving from one area to another, right? Do you know anybody in your family who has come to this place, come to San Francisco or wherever you're watching our Dharma talk from today, from another part of the world? I think of my great-grandfather who, from Norway, traveled and settled in the Midwest, where I grew up. And so Shinran also, he moved into this new area. And when people move into a new area, sometimes they're welcomed for the skills that they bring, the contributions they make to the community. Other times people aren't really sure if they're ready to be welcoming or not. Shinran Shonin was a Buddhist teacher. He traveled with these people to support them and share the Dharma, in this newly developing area of Japan. And people, took one look at him dressed in his Buddhist robes, and they knew he was a Buddhist teacher. Right? Now, he was not the only Buddhist teacher in this area. There was a well-established teacher there by the name of Bennen. And Bennen, it said, had a following of 800 disciples. Right? And he had many people would go to Bennen and ask him to perform sacred rituals. They believed that Bennen had the power through his rituals. He was what was called a yamabushi, a monk who lived in the mountains and did difficult practices and had the power to do things like bring rain to parched crops, to bring about the healing of disease, to bring about good fortune in other matters. So people would go and they would ask Bennen for this support, and he would perform these rites, and in some cases, the desired outcome would be achieved. In other cases, it wouldn't, right? But it was those times, right, that it worked. It gave people hope and trust. And so when Shinran appeared, immediately people asked him, "What can you do? What are your special powers?" And Shinran Shonin said, "Well, I don't have any special powers." "Really? Well, what do you do? What do you teach?" He said, Oh, I teach. I hear Namo Amida Butsu. "Oh, Namo Amida Butsu. Does Namo Amida Butsu make it rain?" "No." "Does Namo Amida Butsu cure illness?" "No." "What does it do?" Shinran Shonin said, "Namo Amida Butsu is the voice of the Buddha, calling to us, assuring us that even if we go through difficult times where it doesn't rain, even if we experience illness, even if our lives come to an end, that There's no need for fear because we are embraced by the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. It carries us through all of these difficult times. We can accept all of this as the truth taught by the Buddha, and we know that we will realize awakening through the guidance of the Buddha's wisdom and compassion. So whatever we face in this life, we can do so with peace of mind. This is not my power, but the power of the Buddha's primal vow. When people heard this teaching, of course, they were naturally drawn to this. And so as more and more people began to gather to hear Shinran's teaching, Bennen also began to hear about Shinran's teaching. And he wasn't particularly happy about it, right? Because all of these people who had been seeking his teachings now were going to Shinran Shonin. And so he began to feel that his territory was being threatened. And he made a plan. He said, okay, I'll find out where this Shinran travels, and I'll straighten things out with my bow and my arrow. Right? So he would go to Itajikiyama, where Shinran Shonin would often walk as he was traveling from place to place. And Bennen waited day after day along the paths of Itajikiyama with his bow and arrow ready to shoot Shinran Shonin with an arrow, right? But as he waited more and more, he didn't see Shinran. He would ask his followers, where does he travel? He said, oh, he travels on the path that goes around the east of the mountain. So Bennen would wait there. No Shinran. They say, where was he? Oh, he went around the west side of the mountain. So then Bennen would wait on the west. No Shinran. Where did he go? Oh, today he went on the east side. Bennen finally became so frustrated that he went right to Shinran's door, the door of his house, right? Pounded at the gate, shouted, Oi, Shinran! Come on out. Come on out. You know, I imagine Shinran walking out, opening up the door. Oh, hello. Hi, who are you? Bennen, the Yamabushi, animal skins, weaponry, sword, bow and arrow, right? Scary guy. Says, I'm Bennen. I'm here for you, Shinran. Shinran's other companions would have seen Bennen and just run, right? But Shinran, we're told he remained calm. He said, oh, welcome. What brings you here? I've come here to kill you, right? Threatening voice. Shinran said, oh, okay. So aren't you afraid? Shinran said, well, I leave the matters of life and death to Amida Buddha. But why don't you come inside? And I'd like to get to know you. Why don't we have a conversation? Would you like some tea? But, I'm here. Didn't you hear me? Didn't you hear me? Shinran said, I heard you. I'd like to hear more about you, right? He was open. He was trusting. He welcomed Bennen. Bennen said, what is this Nembutsu teaching that you teach? Shinran says, it's a teaching that everyone is welcome. No one is excluded. Everyone is welcome. No one is left out. Bennen says, what about me? I'm here for you. Do you welcome me too? Shinran said, no one is left out. Everyone is welcome. And in this moment, Bennen realized this man had no fear. This man had a broad, expansive heart that welcomed everyone, even those who came with ill intent, even those who came with aggression. So Bennen in that moment said, will you take me as your disciple? And Shinran said, I have not even one disciple. I have no disciples. But let us be friends and hear this Nembutsu teaching together. And so Bennen, in that moment, discarded his sword, discarded his weapons, and he came to be a companion of Shinran Shonin's, a fellow traveler in the Nembutsu, came to be one of Shinran's closest companions who traveled with him throughout the years on this journey of the Nembutsu. Right? And so Shinran Shonin, through his own life, he shows us in this episode that he has this vast heart, this heart that welcomes all, this heart we receive from from Amida Buddha in these words, Namo Amida Butsu. And so Bennen came to be called Myohobo, marvelous Dharma. Right? He traveled with Shinran. They journeyed together, the Nembutsu, and they rejoiced in this teaching of the Buddha who cares for each of us, concerned for each of us with the concern of a parent toward the sick child. And so today, in our tumultuous times, as we hear this teaching of the Nembutsu, we reflect upon Shinran Shonin, who shows us how to live this teaching, even if we're an unenlightened being, because Shinran Shonin himself said, I'm not an enlightened being, but he sets an example for us of how a life is completely transformed, how we too can receive this great peace of mind in the Nembutsu. So I'm deeply grateful to all of you for joining us, taking part in today's Honko service, where we hear these words, Namo Amida Butsu. Take comfort in the welcoming embrace of Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. So in conclusion, I invite you to join me and let us together hear the comforting call of Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namam Dabutsu, Namam Dabutsu, Namam Dabutsu, Namam Dabutsu.
Thank you, Reverend Adams, for that wonderful Dharma talk. We will now have our Gatha, Ondokusan II, on page 220 in the Purple Service Book and also displayed on your screen. Ondokusan is based on a poem, Wasan, written by Shinran to express deep gratitude for the compassion of the Buddha and of all our Dharma teachers. Following the Gatha, we will have a series of mini reflections on onko from the BCSF Minister's Assistants.
Hello, everyone. I'm Minister's Assistant Leo Balambao. The debt of gratitude I owe to the Tathagata's great compassion, I will proclaim until my life disintegrates into dust. The debt of gratitude I owe to my Dharma teachers, I will express until my bodily form is finally shattered. Namo Amida Butsu. For me, Shinran Shonin's Wasan Ondokusan expresses the heart of Honko when we gather as a Sangha to express our gratitude to Shinran for sharing the Nembutsu teaching. But Honko at BCSF is also a time when we gather to share a meal, welcome new members, and share our talents. Now more than ever, I'm grateful for all of you and for Honko's past. So I express my gratitude to you, my Dharma friends, and wish you a happy Honko and a happy New Year, and look forward to the day when we can all meet again. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.
Happy Ho'onko. Actually, for me, it's joyful Ho'onko. Because of Shinran's profound teaching, I am hearing the Nembutsu today with great joy. One of my favorite teachings of Shinran is found in chapter 10 of the Tanisho. And the whole chapter is actually just one sentence long. It's written, in the Nembutsu, no self-working is true working. It is beyond description, explanation, and conception. I appreciate this seemingly paradoxical teaching, which suggests that true working is the immeasurable world of Amida Buddha. It is the working of the primal vow of boundless compassion, infinitely manifesting in this finite world. And self-working refers to my calculating, controlling, Bonbu perspective, which clings to the three poisons of attachment, aversion, and delusion. I think this chapter is a beautiful invitation to just let go. When we hear and feel the working of boundless compassion, I, just as I am, with all of my blind passions, can only say thank you. Namo Amida Butsu. In the Nembutsu, no self-working is true working. It is beyond description, explanation, and conception. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandos. Namandos. Please stay safe, healthy, and connected in this new year.
Hi. When I first started coming to our temple, I was a member of another Buddhist tradition. But I kept coming back because I was so fascinated by the figure of Shinran Shonin, and I was especially taken by the statue in our lobby. I was taken in by the image of Shinran in his robes with his staff, but especially by the inscription on the statue. It says, "My entire being I dedicate to spread Amida's compassion." And so I was curious. I wanted to learn more. So I kept coming back. And the more I learned, the more I realized that there are profound truths in our Shin Buddhist teachings. And I owe this to the words of Shinran Shonin. From the hymns of the Dharma ages, there's a passage here that became very meaningful for me. Shinran writes, "Such is the benevolence of Amida's great compassion that we must strive to return it, even to the breaking of our bodies. Such is the benevolence of the masters and true teachers that we must endeavor to repay it, even to our bones becoming dust." So these words are pretty heavy, and they must be because the message is so deep. So as I hear these words, I'm made to realize that the truths of compassion, the primal vow, the Nembutsu, are all so immense that they will remain with us even after our bones turn to dust. And so I'm grateful for the words of Shinran Shonin and how fortunate we are that he dedicated his entire being to spreading Amida's compassion. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namandas, namandas, namandas. For me, Ho-on means two emotions, gratitude and awareness. As the coronavirus pandemic and our hectic life made our direct connection to the Sangha community difficult to see. That's why this is important for us here and now. Please reflect on these two words again. Arigato and okage-sama. Do you know what today's words are the whole calendar? Fools are not aware of their own foolishness. You may feel like being scolded somehow when you heard the foolishness. If you don't like it, let's replace the word with vulnerability. Acknowledging and accepting one's weakness or foolishness requires much more courage than showing off the strengths and influence of your power and status. I'm imperfect. We are imperfect. That's why I can more appreciate for the golden chain of life with my family, friends, and the Dharma, and also interrelatedness and coexistence. Please think about and write down somewhere what you appreciate for and what you would be aware of from the appreciation. Putting them into some words, you will grasp them more deeply. Try it. Thank you. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo.
Like the cherry blossom, the heart planning on tomorrow is ephemeral indeed. What sudden storm may not arise in the middle of the night? Namo Amida Butsu. Shinran wrote those words at the age of 9, just before he entered the Tendai Temple on Mount Hiei. The story that we hear goes that when he was questioned by the master about why he wanted to be ordained, he spoke of his mother who had passed away and his strong desire to understand what happens after death, upon which he wrote his famous poem. As I think about Shinran Shonin's memorial today, I think about Shinran's time and its similarity to our own. Although in 2021, we do not have to face starvation or famines as Shinran did, we, like the child Shinran, live in a moment of pandemics, natural disasters, unrest, and violence. We too live in turbulent times where nothing in life can be taken for granted. For me, the words of young Shinran speak volumes about not just impermanence, but also human fragility. For me, the difference is a sense of urgency in understanding and owning our fragility. Our lives, our institutions, our democracy, what we consider to be our way of life, and the things that are near and dear to us can be blown away by a sudden storm, deadly disease, unrest, or violence. And these easily shattered things can be gone in an instant. That leads me to the conclusion of young Shinran, that there isn't a moment to waste in the time in which we live. We need to move forward now with appreciation, gratitude, and acceptance. We acknowledge that saying the Nembutsu, relying on Amida, and living every day to advance the values and purpose that we hold dear is our only path forward. Like the cherry blossom, the heart planning on tomorrow is ephemeral indeed. What sudden storm may not arise in the middle of the night? Namo Amida Butsu.
Hello, I'm David Pading. I want to wish you all a happy Honko and a good new year. Last year was very difficult. We had no temple, no Dharma talk, no friends, no services. Still, for me, the words of Shinran rang true. Shinran says, just say the Nembutsu and be saved by Amida. Nothing else is involved. I really can't say how it works. Perhaps like the COVID-19 vaccine, we don't really need to. But for me, I found it's been good medicine. Just say the Nembutsu. That's my lesson and my wish for you in this coming year. Please join me. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.
I'd like to thank Reverend Henry Adams for his Dharma talk, the minister's assistants for their Dharma reflections, Reverend Dr. David Pading for leading us in chant, and for Kevin Yoza for all his audio-visual support each week. This concludes our Honko service. Thank you for joining us. Please stay safe and healthy. Happy New Year. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.